cereals. Additionally, we also have a lot of spores from bracken. And finally, we also confirm the goose food family, which is constant, present in all of the ingesta samples. Now, the fascinating was that we know that there were different meats in different localities of his intestine. And according to this, we know that we have at least 2 parts of meals. But if we know now the background column in this case, we can make, by numerical comparison, a check how the pollen flora from one sample is similar to the pollen flora from the next. And according to this, we can see that the pollen flora from the last meal of the small bowel corresponds very closely with the pollen flora from the meal of the first part of the transverse colon. So according to this, we can say they belong more or less to one meal. And we have the same at the end of the intestinal tract. But there is one precise distinct in between in the transverse colon. This is colon number 2, which is completely different from all these 2 we had before. So at least we can say that the Iceman has consumed 3 different meals which are reflected in his intestinal tract, and this all reflects a well-balanced diet of meat, cereals, and vegetables. So, if we know now a little bit this pollen flora and keep in mind that he had 3 meals, we can go now to the social context. So the main question was, where did he come from? Where was his origin? Where was his domicile located? And the second one is, what was he doing there? So concerned with the second question is, what was his profession? And also what we need to know something about what was he doing up there, the short time movements the Iceman made before he died. And all these questions built up here can be answered by pollen analysis from background pollen. So in this case, amongst background pollen, there was one which is predominating in the colon 2 sample. And this is the hop hornbeam, Ostrea carpinifolia. Here you have the preserved pollen grain, which has still the cell content inside. And this is, again, amazing, because usually the cell content is decayed within a fortnight or 3 weeks if the pollen settles on solid ground. So this tells us that this pollen was incorporated immediately after its release from the flowers. And up to this moment, the assumption was that the Iceman died in autumn, more or less the same time when he was discovered. But this was the first evidence that he died in spring. So what we made was a test. And there is a very nice record and monitoring of airborne pollen in the Finchgau concerning to hay fever. We used this data set, and you can see the different colored clouds, which are all pollen spectra from one day clustering together to a month. And here we have a modern analog where we can test when the Iceman died. And so we took the colon sample and compared it with all these pollen spectra. And out of this, we get the best fit at the end of April and the beginning of May, which corroborates that the Iceman died in spring. And this has severe implications on the scene which was expressed up to now. Because everybody suggested he died in autumn, everything was melted, the mummy boulder, the rock where he was lying prone upon it, was visible for the Iceman. But now that we know that we are in spring, we have up there several meters of snow. The gully is not visible as well. The mummy boulder is not visible. And therefore we can say there is no intentional resting of the Iceman on the boulder. Austria carpinifolia is a sub-Mediterranean species. It's not naturally distributed north of the main alpine ridge. It reaches its northern natural distribution limit in the area of the Schnalz Valley at altitudes in between 1100 to 1300 meters. And this corresponds more or less to this pink zone on the vegetation map you can see on the right in this lower part of the Val Venosta and the Schnalz Valley. So according to this, we can say that the Iceman had been hours before he died in the valley bottoms south of the main alpine ridge. And this confirms that he was coming from the south. There were additional investigations made on the origin of the Iceman, dealing with oxygen and strontium isotopes on the enamel of his teeth. So you have different isotopes on oxygen and strontium in the environment, and we consume them. And these isotope relationship is archived in our bones and teeth. And if we measure these then thousands of years afterwards, we can tell something where this person lived. Müller and his colleagues have made these investigations, and their results have been that the Iceman grew up as a boy in the area near Bressanone, and then as an adult migrated into the Val Venosta, where he later died. Okay, now we know something about his origin, that he was coming from the south. We've also learned something about that he had 3 meals. And we have the enormous advantage that we know precisely the location of the sampling sites in the digestive tract. And we know that these are at least 3 meals. And what we also know very well and very precisely, the digestional transit times of a 46-year-old male person. There's a huge medical literature about that. And now we are going to use the background pollen from the ingesta samples in the tract and use this as a complete sequence. So we have a temporal sequence according to this, and according to this that we know, usually transit time lasts in average 33 hours. We can tell where the Iceman stayed within the last 2 days. Again, we are doing this with a modern analog technique. So we sample each vegetation type, moss cushions, and then investigate